will be very good. Also, we're always on the lookout for new speakers for these sessions. So anyone in the audience at a future event, if you're keen to and you've got a relevant session, please feel free to reach out to me, either via the details that are on there or come and speak to me in the breakout that we've got today. Okay? So we've got 3 very good speakers this evening, starting with Mark Gosa. We've got William Torrington, and then around 7:45 we're going to break. We've got pizza and all that coming for you today. And rounding off the evening, we've got Jason Wynn here. So without kind of further ado, I will welcome... Is Mark coming up first, or Will? Sorry. Yeah, Mark. Sorry. I've literally just walked through the door. So Mark, come up. So thank you. Yeah, I'll just move that quickly. Yep. That's on the side there. Cool. What do you need for your one?
Okay, my display, what is it? Can I read this off the table?
Yeah, just move that down a second. That's all right. You got that one for the clicker as well. Oh.
Cool. So I thought the introduction was going to be a few more minutes, so I was just still preparing. No, so I'm ready now, yeah. So, okay, our first session today is Azure Functions, getting started. So when I was looking into Azure Functions, first of all, I found this article. I was trying to sell it to our senior management. And so basically PwC are recommending to fintechs, to banks, that if you want to regain that advantage over your fintech competition, then serverless is the way to go, or a way to go rather than the way to go. So that got us all interested. We got the management, they piqued their interest, and we got to start playing around with Azure Functions. So a little bit about me. So I'm one of the engineering leads, and I tweet a little bit. I've got a few blog posts. Some of them are Azure Functions, some of them are Terraform, anything really. And a lot of the code you'll see tonight will be on GitHub, so I'll tweet out about that later. So take down my Twitter handle if you want. But I generally do anything in the DevOps space, the sort of Azure, Terraform, infrastructure as code, a bit of .NET as well. Cool. So what will we cover tonight then? So we'll talk a bit about serverless, why we actually want to go serverless. And then we'll talk about the 2 types of Azure Functions. So you've got Azure Functions and Azure Durable Functions. And then we'll talk about how to get started, and I've got some demos in there as well. Okay, so serverless. So these are the 3 offerings from the 3 major vendors. So today we'll just talk about Azure Functions. So when we were trying to sell this to senior management, we were telling them, okay, these are the steps you have to go through to deploy a virtual machine. And there's a few other steps in there, but I lost interest typing them out. So, okay, deploying servers, joining to domains, backups, patch management, access management, load balancing, hardening, networking, etc. And then when you compare it to serverless, we just do those 2 at the bottom. So we save tons of time. And actually from an infrastructure engineering point of view, not having to manage patch management and sort out backups and then all these vulnerability meetings and all this is a great help, because they're not really the most fascinating things. So Who's using Azure Functions at the moment? Yeah. Who's using them in production as well as dev test? Okay, cool. So hopefully most of you learned something here. So Azure Functions allow you to run small bits of code in the cloud. Essentially, it's very simple. You also get a local development environment, so you don't actually have to spin up an Azure function in order to test it's working okay. It will work with multiple languages, so you've got JavaScript, you've got F#, you've got C#, PowerShell is in preview, and then you've got a whole host of triggers. It could be Event Grid, it could be Event Hub, Q trigger, HTTP trigger, Cosmos DB. I've got another slide on there somewhere. But there's certainly a lot of integrations you can do with Azure Functions. So it's also pretty cheap. So we have a production function that is running. It is customer facing, and it's being hit quite a lot. And it costs us about £10 a month, which is less than my phone bill, actually. So we're quite proud of that one. So it's also multi-region, that one. So okay, so the different app service, there are different plans. So you can have the app service plan. So in this one, you specify how many nodes you want, and then you pay for those running instances. So it could be that your function is never hit, but you're still paying that fixed monthly cost. There's no free allowance, but there's no cold start either, because your VMs on the underneath your functions are always running. Then you've got the consumption plan, which is it's a very different model. You're now paying per execution, so the function isn't actually loaded onto a server. I'll say server in a serverless talk, but your function is not loaded on the server until you actually try to hit it, and because it takes a few seconds to actually load it and start it up, that's why you've got this cold start. So it can be a few seconds actually. I've seen up to maybe 5, 6, 8 seconds, just that initial execution. But then you get 1 million free executions per month. So yeah, you just have to weigh them up. So next one along is the premium plan. So this one is quite interesting because it basically holds one of the CPUs, keeps it warm. So you've always got at least one function available. So you lose the cold start, but then the cost increases because you're paying for that instance all the time. And then if you want to go completely isolated and have everything in your own VNet, then you can go with an app service environment. But there's a hefty base cost on that. I think it's £800 to £900 a month. And then you pay for each instance on top. So you're already paying over £1,000 per month per region. So, okay. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's quite a lot of triggers. So I got this list from Visual Studio. So once you stay, you want to create a new Azure function, then you get this list to choose from. So I think you might be able to add others as well, but haven't looked into that. So one thing we found was when businesses are starting to adopt the cloud, then not everything is actually in Azure. You still have some on-prem services, and you can still connect your Azure functions to on-prem. So it doesn't really sound that nice that you've got this super cool serverless function connecting to a server 2008 R2 server on-prem, but sometimes you have to do that for a bit. So the option that's currently in currently GA is to actually integrate it with a virtual network, but you don't get that integration with an express route. You have to put something in between to get down an express route. And there is a new option, which is a preview virtual network integration that's coming out soon. But that will allow you to connect to an express route. So you can actually get your function to connect to on-prem without any additional servers or services. Another thing you could do, which we're looking at, is you can get the function output into a storage account and into a storage queue, and then you can have something on-prem that keeps polling that queue. So that way, actually, you don't have to open up any ports on-prem. You don't need a VPN or express route. Cool. And then ultimate isolation is that app service environment. One thing to note is actually the outbound IP restrictions. So if you're a business where that's very important, then actually only the app service environment gives you very static IPs. Actually, app service plan will be static to an extent, but I think if you scale up or scale down or you scale out, then you have a bit of a problem because your IPs change. So being in banking, security is high up on the list. So hands up who's had problems trying to get things past security. A lot of questions. Yeah, cool. So first thing we got asked was about authentication. Yep, so you can set up authentication on your function app. It's actually fairly easy to do. I'll show it to you later on. Traffic encryption, yep, fine. You enforce HTTPS for all inbound traffic. Data encryption. So the function apps don't store any data unless you tell it to actually write it to a storage account. However, there's a caveat to that, which is the durable function, because that's going to store your entire requests in JSON, in clear text in a storage account. So that's something to bear in mind. You might want to delete that straight away. IP restrictions, yep, inbound IP restrictions are quite straightforward to do. Outbound a little trickier unless you have one of the plans that allows you to do that. Another thing we were looking at was managed identity. So actually, if you say, if you needed to maybe pull a secret out of or maybe a certificate out of a key vault. So what you can do is you can either put your client secret and client ID into app settings, and then you can pull it out that way. Or you can tell your function app to run under a managed identity, and then you give that managed identity access to the key vault. So that means Microsoft manage those credentials. You don't have them in any config files or wherever really. Another one here is about versus monoliths. So small functions versus monoliths. So with a small function, you know exactly what it's going to do. So you know this function is going to write to that database. It's going to call that particular stored procedure. So I can now set the permissions or set the security very, very granular. So if security asks me what does it have access to, say, well, you can hit that particular server and run that stored procedure, and that's it. So yeah, you can actually get a better picture of how you need to secure things. Okay, there are other options as well, like function runtime scanning. So there isn't much for Azure at the moment, but there's two tools that I'm aware of for maybe AWS. So there's PureSec and Sync. So that can actually run within the function, or the AWS Lambda rather, and actually scan the code as it's running. Cool. So for monitoring then, so monitoring isn't that complicated when you compare it to, it's very similar to all the other Azure components really. So yeah, you can use application insights, integrates very well. Datadog as well, you can just keep polling your function. But the main thing to think about with Azure Functions is that they need to be Azure-less. Whatever you use for monitoring cannot be installed on an Azure function. Datadog is interesting though because they have an API, so you can actually write that into your Azure function. So when there's certain events on the function, you can then call the Datadog API and output your information that way. Okay, so that's monitoring. Okay, so limitations. Has anyone found any limitations with function apps so far? A fair few nods. Okay, so the different plans have different limitations, and it's always important to take a look at what sort of function you have running. Some of them will have a maximum execution time, could be 5 minutes by default on the consumption plan. You can increase it to 10 minutes. But if you need to run something longer, then you're looking at an app service plan or an app service environment. Or you can look at durable functions, which we'll come to in a bit. There's also a maximum outbound connections. So we found this out when we were testing. We had a function app that was calling another API, and we loaded up with a whole load of requests, and the whole thing just crashed. So what we found was actually there's a maximum of 600 outbound connections which are active, and another 600 which can be inactive. But yeah, we still managed to hit that limit. They also have limits on maximum concurrent incoming requests, so as well to be aware of that. But what you can do is, I mean, you can easily put function apps in multiple regions, have something like a traffic manager that's load balancing between them, or you could use API management, and you can have a policy that says, okay, keep sending it to this one, and if that one's down, send it to the other, or load balance between them. So there's a lot of ways you can get around it. And another way could be that actually you make your functions very small. So rather than having a complete, like a function that does all of CRUDs, so create, read, update, and delete, you could have one for create, one for read, update, and delete. So, and then there's the point about cold starts. So that's always important to be aware of. So it might be that actually your function is being hit once every few seconds, even off-peak, in which case you're not hitting the cold start issue. So I think it's about 20 minutes. If it's not running for about 20 minutes or so, then Microsoft sort of deallocates that function. And then the next time you run it, you get the cold start. Cool. Any questions so far? Within the function or outside of the function? Yeah, so I think you have to look at your maximum amount of traffic, and then you have as many functions as you need to make sure you never hit that limit. So it could be that you have a traffic manager and then 5 function apps, but all doing the same thing. And so you've divided the number of requests each function app will handle by 5. Sorry? Re-requesting. You sort of all your requests, you're routing them to 5 different function apps, and each one has their own limit. Yep. Cool. Okay, so let's do a bit of a demo then. Let's see if this works. Okay, so to create a function app, so I'm using Visual Studio 2019 here, and okay, so to create a function app project, you basically go into File, New Project, and then you've got an Azure Functions option. Click next. You tell it where you want to store it, of course. And then you get something that looks, you get a function, like a sort of boilerplate function, looks a little bit like this one. Is that too small? Is that okay for you to read? Yep, cool. So this is a very simple one. All it's doing is, it's an HTTP trigger. The function name is sort of an attribute around your method. It's telling the function runtime that that's actually a function, not just a method. And then here you specify your trigger type, and there is where actually you can specify the authentication. So actually you get different options. I can't remember what the default is, but yeah, anonymous is probably not the way we're going to go. So you can just choose function authorization. Your request comes in. Then we're now just going to query it for the name. So this one's actually a get and a post. So I can get or post to it. So either it's going to look for the GET query and look for the name, or it's going to look in the request body, deserialize it, and then look for the name there. And then it just returns an OK object result, so it just returns a 200 saying hello name, or bad request. So to save time and that you don't have to keep spinning up Azure functions and then deploying it each time you want to debug. So I've just hit F5 to start debugging. And I have Postman as well ready. So yeah, that doesn't normally happen. So yeah, it's always when you're doing a live demo. So so it'll basically always run on port 7071 locally, and you can configure that. So if you wanted to have multiple functions running locally, and you wanted them to talk to each other, you can tell it to run on different ports. Cool. Okay, that was relatively painless. That was good. Cool. So on the left, you see the function app running. You get a cool logo at the top. Yeah, and then at the end it says actually all the triggers that are available to all the triggers that are available externally. So that's the URL that I have in Postman, and I'm just going to pass in a name of Microsoft Cloud User Group. Yeah, and so you'll see a few seconds of delay here. So it took about 3 seconds to run it. But if you run it again, you'll see it's a lot quicker. So that's that initial sort of cold start as it's loading up. And you get a pretty decent log in the console window as well. So you can see executing HTTP trigger. And you can see the request in there as well. So you can tell it worked out that there was a GET. I think I have a post later on. Yep, status 200, request ID, and the URL that was hit. Well, that would be the second time I ran it. So it's very straightforward to get started. And actually, you can see there's very little code here. So once you have your function running locally, the next thing you want to do is try and get it into Azure. So if you've not created a function app in Azure before, that is also very straightforward. So all we need to do is just search for function app. Great. So all the function apps they need a unique name globally. So I'm just going to put Azure Func. And you can specify whatever resource group. And then you've got the hosting plan here. So don't have any app service environments in this subscription. And choose your region as always. You get an option to choose the runtime stack as well. You can see there PowerShell core is in preview. So actually you can't run sort of the native PowerShell on a V2 function app. So I think the old version of PowerShell is available on V1, but only experimental. So V2 is going to be, that's preview. Okay, you choose your storage account and you choose your App Insights instance. When you hit create, it just creates your function app. And then all of this is just very easy to deploy with ARM templates or with Terraform. You could even do PowerShell if you want, or anything really. So I've already got a few function apps deployed, and so that function app I just showed you in Visual Studio, that is deployed to, I believe it is this one. Oops, sorry, that's the storage account. Okay, so when you go in, you'll see it loading a list of functions. So there are actually two functions there. There's an HTTP trigger and a queue trigger. And what's good is that you get the option to test it out straight in the portal. So I'll give you a quick demo of that. So again, we've got get or post. So let's put in name. Remove the other one. Cool. Yeah, so you get a very similar experience because you also have the console output down here at the bottom. So it's the same as, well, almost the same as what was in the, when you're running it locally. Cool. So you get a whole load of features through the portal. You can enable and disable different functions. You can just tick those boxes there. And then, who's been using web jobs much? Or web apps? Yeah, cool. Yeah, so you get a lot of the similar features. It's a different UI. So you've got the function app settings where you can see your different keys and your runtime version. And this here is basically to prevent a denial of wallet. So if for some reason your function app is compromised, they probably can't do much in terms of what they can access, but they can certainly hit it a fair amount. So you can set a daily quota. It does take your function app offline though when you hit that. So it's sort of a last resort. And then for application settings, so if you've got a .NET Core app and you're passing settings with app settings.json, or you're using environment variables, you can basically put them in here. So you can add any other application setting. And then you've got the general settings like whether you've got FTP allowed or whether you've disabled HTTP, etc. I can also show you App Insights. So since we've hit it once, we've got some information in there. So as you see, it's very quick and easy to create it. And if you create the whole thing together with App Insights, then all the instrumentation keys are set for you. So you can have a look at today's requests. So you should see this afternoon's one. I hit it a few times this morning as well. But yeah, so that's this evening's one. So there you go. And you can drill into different functions. So if I had other functions that were hit, which I think in the last 24 hours I did. So you can drill in and see sort of what each function's doing. Yep. Okay, so is that a question there? Okay, another thing is with auto-scaling. So it's a great feature of serverless in that if your function app is hit quite a lot, then it will automatically scale for you. It will load your function onto other servers, which is great. So if the other team says, okay, we're going to hit your function app twice as much now, it's fine. You just get on with your day and you just let me know how it went. You can make it seem that you've done loads of work. Cool. Okay, I've also got a queue trigger. So in order to show you that, I'll show you the code first of all. So it's, again, very straightforward. So so the function app always connects to a storage account. Here I've got an empty connection string, so just assume that it's going to use that same storage account. So of course you can add a new connection string in there and you specify it in here. And so all it's doing is, so we've got a queue trigger and it's looking at the queue in queue. It looks for a string. And then I've also got a queue output as well. So this is just taking one thing from one queue, doing a slight transformation on it, and then putting it onto another queue. So what it's doing is just logging some information, and then looking for that queue item, deserializing the JSON, and then looking for the name. If the name is empty, it just inserts anonymous, and then just outputs hello name to that other queue. So let's have a look and see if we can get that working. It's great that my storage accounts are almost exactly the same name, so I have to guess which one it is. So, okay, so I need to put in some JSON here. Oops. Okay, so it's looking for a name. So I have to remember for this one that the name is lowercase. Microsoft Cloud User Group. Cool. So that's some rather messy JSON. So once I put it in there, if I keep refreshing it, eventually the function app will pick it up. To be honest, it probably has picked it up already, and so that's gone from the queue in. And if I have a look at the queue out for some time around now, is that the time? Okay, yeah, so that's the queue output there. And you can see there's very, very little code. So actually, I barely need to know anything about queues in order to do that. Cool. So this is all in the .NET space. So we've also got some PowerShell ones as well. So we're not using PowerShell ones so much because they're still in preview. I've told the guys not to do that in case it does just stop working one day. So I was trying to figure out what would be fun to demo, and so it was actually last night when I wrote the last demo. So I wrote this one straight into the portal, because I believe in things like source control and things. Yeah, what is that? So this one, all it's doing, it's an HTTP trigger again. And so it looks a little different with PowerShell. There's a bit more to it. So you've got this sort of param block here, and you've got like a .NET namespace that's being imported. So what it's doing is it's looking at the request body for storage accounts, resource group, and location. And then actually it's connecting to Azure if there is actually a storage account name specified. Yeah, so it connects to Azure, and then actually creates a storage account. So I can now just pass those parameters, and it just goes and creates storage accounts. Yeah, then if there's a problem, it just says, please pass the storage account name, and then it outputs some information to the caller. So I think I've got that in Postman somewhere. Cool. So let's quickly have a look at the resource group. Okay, so I don't have any storage accounts which are named test. So I'm gonna pass in some JSON to create that. So I'm just calling the function like I would a .NET function, a JavaScript function. And it takes a few moments to do it because it is actually, in the background, it is actually creating a storage account. But in the meantime, we can go have a look at the actual function app and have a look at the output here. So I think it should be doing something. The logs rather, not the console. You're connected, great. And then because there's no client ID and client secret there, then you're not worried about those credentials being leaked. So you could use this to run reports. You can get all the powered on VMs and send it to send it by email, send it by whatever really. Okay, so create a new storage account for me, and in the output here, you can see a sort of similar output as if you ran it in PowerShell on your local machine. So it just gives me all the information there. And then hopefully, if I go back here, refresh this, yeah, so at the bottom there, it's a new storage account. So that opens up a whole world of possibilities. Now you've got event-driven PowerShell. And you can chain them up as you wish. Right. Okay, so back to the slides then. So that's a bit about, so that's Azure Functions. I've got 1 or 2 slides on durable functions and then a quick demo and then. Okay, that's how PowerPoint works. Yep. Okay, so durable functions are where, okay, you've got a bit more of a complex pattern. You now need to do something like in that example, which is a fan out and a fan back in. So functions are all stateless. Once they do their thing, they have no idea what happened. So what your durable function will do is it will store all that state into table storage. And it's got sort of built-in queues as well. And this gives you an idea of what sort of pattern. So you've got that fan out, fan in. You've got an async one just to the right of it. And then on the far right, you've got sort of human approvals. So you can actually get your function app to go to sleep and wake up when someone approves something by text message or whatever. You can chain up your functions, bottom left, or you can have sort of a monitor where it will keep monitoring for a particular event. So let me show you the durable function quickly. So durable function, you've got orchestrators and activities. So you've got an orchestrator that sort of wraps around all your activities, and it will call them in order or all together or however you say. So for example, this is my orchestrator, and you'll see I've got an array of tasks, and then it calls that one activity called wait. So that one actually just waits for 10 seconds. And then when all the tasks are complete, it returns the answer, the response. So that one, in theory, because I'm asking it to do it 3 times for 10 seconds each. So it should, well, if it's not running in parallel, then it will take at least 30 seconds. So this one normally comes back first time after about 15 seconds or 20 seconds. So come back to it. So it's great if you have some sort of a large process that you want to run on multiple nodes, and you don't really need those nodes afterwards. You can just fan out, run it on 100 nodes, and then collect the results from all of them, and then you don't pay for those afterwards. So yeah, it took 31 seconds because that's the cold start time. But this one should be a lot quicker. Yeah, so just over 10 seconds. Yeah, so good. I'm glad that didn't take 30 seconds. I have another example, which is an async pattern. So this one just sleeps for, I think, 20, 30 seconds. So you don't really always want your caller to be waiting that time. So if I call this one, I get an immediate response, and I get a status query URI, and I can basically keep querying the status. So if I query it now, at the bottom right here, you'll see it says running, and I've got no output. And then, so you can have something that just keeps polling it every few seconds. And now it's completed. So now you've just sort of got a fire and sort of forget for a bit and come and check every now and then. Yeah, so those are things that are just a bit tricky to do with Azure Functions, but that's where Azure Durable Functions comes in. Cool. So who's using serverless? Some pretty big names using serverless. So we've got a few names there. So just in summary, what did we cover? We looked at the benefits of serverless. We looked at Azure Functions from a security point of view, from a cost perspective, how you can get started with some very basic functions in .NET and PowerShell, and then a bit about durable functions as well. Yeah. So yeah, up to you guys to go and think about what's worth testing with Azure Functions. There's a lot of times we use virtual machines, and that's just the default, but sometimes an Azure function will probably do the same job and with much less management. Yeah, so thanks a lot. Any questions or anything? Yep.
You use Visual Studio. Would you play around using Visual Code and do the same local?
Yeah, you can.
Using alternative using Visual Studio, use Visual Code to create your own functions there.
Yeah,
Is there any pros or cons of it either?
yeah, so in general, I found Visual Studio better for .NET in general, but then you can still write .NET functions with VS Code. You have to download, there's a Azure Functions extension for
Extension,
.NET, and you download that, and there's a little button, you just click it
Yeah.
and it says, create new function. And then there are a few other components you have to download, like the function runtime, I think. Yeah, but there's pretty good instructions on the...
Yeah, I've done it with Visual Studio Code rather than Visual Studio.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience using Azure Functions to automate internal domain stuff? Say, for example, Active Directory schema changes or replication checks?
Okay, so we've got some monitoring tools. So one of them, we have to monitor a number of rows in a database. So it's just running on a timer function, checks the number of rows, it's logging into an Azure database. And then the result of that, it's, I think, outputting into Datadog, calling the Datadog API. Yeah, so it's low maintenance. We like it.
Any other questions? Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Yep,
Cheers,
thank you.
We'll have a 2-minute break. We'll get Will get set up, and then we'll be starting off in just a second.
Right, so, well, let's get started. Hopefully you're here to see the Power Platform and AI Builder overview. Completely blown away by the Azure elements, actually. It's something I want to get more involved with, but as you'll see in a moment, I'm far from technical, so let's go. So I'd like to start off with a slight apology. When I got asked to take this over from Chris, I was very eager, but unfortunately since then, I managed to damage my back, so I've really only just managed to get round to doing this now. So if you see me a little bit drowsy or slurry, that's because I've just got a ton of codeine running through my body, which is fantastic. So I don't actually know I'm here. I'm probably in a hospital shouting this at people. Chris has dropped out, and I've filled that gap. So my name's William Torrington. I'm a pre-sales solution architect for Hitachi Solutions, also a TDG community leader, which is just a Microsoft community that really gets involved with all the other communities. I focus predominantly on the Microsoft Dynamics 365 stack, so customer engagement, talent, finance and ops, and the Power Platform. And I love beer and coffee, although I can't drink beer tonight, sadly. If you want to reach out to me, my Twitter and LinkedIn is there. So feel free to note that down and tweet and LinkedIn away. So today, we're going to do a high-level overview of what actually is the Power Platform and how that sits within the business application stack overall. So this is really much aligning it to immediate business value. I've got to admit, I really only looked at the paragraph Chris put together about 2 days ago. And I was saying, oh Christ, it's meant to be a true story. It's meant to be an interactive session. I'll see what I can do on that. There are some true stories, but the immediate business value will hopefully shine through. We're going to look at a very high level around what is the AI builder. Then we're going to go on to the objective that we're going to build out today. So it's a live demo. You know, I've done a few of these. It's been about a 50-50. Some go dreadfully wrong, some go brilliant. Let's hope it's the latter today. Then from that, we're just going to highlight why the Power Platform is such a big deal, you know, for that low-code functionality. Then we'll approach the objective, have a look at the overview of how we're going to achieve this using the stack and the tools available to us. Then we'll build it out, have a look at some other business cases, and then wrap up with some questions. Hopefully nothing too complex. Go easy on me, guys. So let's move on. Business applications overview. So first of all, we have Power BI. So for those who are not aware of it, although you probably are all by now, it's a way to really graphically and aesthetically pleasingly represent your data. So from graphs to charts to actually data tables. And it's as much about getting your data in as about actually getting it out. So you'll see that as a common thread throughout. Who's actually used Power BI in this room? A good amount. Good, because I'm not actually going to cover that in a demo, so that's fantastic. You already know about it. Then moving on from that, we have Canvas apps. Now, Canvas apps are what I refer to and what a lot of people refer to as a WYSIWYG business solutions designer and extensibility approach. So it's what you see is what you get. It's the ability to really drag and drop functions and elements, probably functions is the wrong word in this scenario, elements, components, and controls onto a blank canvas and really plug gaps and build out customized business solutions. It's the easiest way to actually describe it. It's a bit like if Microsoft PowerPoint and Excel went on a really hot date and it went incredibly well, a few bottles of wine were drunk, and they had a baby, and this would literally be it, as we'll see in just a moment. Then moving on from that, we have the Common Data Service for apps. So really, the Common Data Service is a way to manage and store securely the data across all business applications, as well as actually custom build-outs, which we'll see today. And you'll see how the rest of the business app actually fit into this overall architecture in just a moment. So we then have what we refer to as the business logic layer. So it's actually stuff that feeds off of the Common Data Service, so that database. So we have model-driven apps, and these are not really like Canvas apps. They're more component-driven. It's a bit more rigid about what you can get out of it from the what you see is what you get, that pixel-perfect design. It's more of, okay, we've got this data, I want it represented in this way, here's the form, here's how you can edit that form, and then you have a lot of business processes applied across the top of that. I'm not going to cover model-driven apps today purely because I find it quite boring to demo, to be honest. You can't really have much fun with it as you can Canvas apps. But sitting across the top of this, you then have business process flow. So it's a way to ensure that when people are carrying out particular business tasks within model-driven apps, and as you'll see in a moment within customer engagement, that they actually pick up all the pertinent areas in that particular process. So they don't miss out at capturing any certain information, filling out mandatory fields, which is very crucial when you're actually using this for business needs. Moving on from that, we have flow, which is the ability to really perform an automation around actions and tasks. So really it stitches all this stuff together where you can actually start triggering scenarios. So I use it a lot for finance and operations, where I can trigger things such as purchase orders that have just come up. If it's come up new, someone's requested like a purchase rec, then an email will go to the procurement manager to go, hey, you've got something to process. Jump on and have a look, here's the link. Then further to that, you have Dynamics 365 for customer engagement and for marketing, for sales, for service, field service, and project service automation. Luckily, I'm not going to run through that today, but that does all feed off the common data service, and it does use a model-driven app, sort of a unified interface that if any of you are used to Dynamics 365 and customer engagement, you'll see it's very similar and it's moving in that direction. Then on top of that is finance and operations, which is Microsoft's flagship ERP system. So it does everything, all the good stuff, all the stuff from your accounts receivable to your accounts payable to fixed assets, general ledger, all the way down to things such as human capital management and even manufacturing. It's all stitched together. It all comes out of the box. You don't actually have to integrate. It's already natively integrated under one application. Then on top of that, we have the human capital management system, which is Talent. So really, this is a bit further than just core HR that you get in FinOps. It's the ability to actually attract talent. So it integrates with LinkedIn and things like that, and it's a way to onboard that talent. It feeds off the CDS, the same as FinOps does to a certain extent, and the same as CE. And you'll notice actually the Power Platform really does support this. So I use this in my day-to-day job to really meet any requirements and gaps that the customer sees as a gap within the Dynamics stack. So this all speaks to each other one way or another. Then moving on from this, because I thought, we've got Teams coming up a bit later, it's important to mention that Office 365 and Microsoft Teams is embedded throughout every single component that you've just seen on the previous architecture. So you can use Flow, Power Apps, model-driven apps, etc., to actually feed off of Office 365 and Teams and feed into, the same as I can with Dynamics 365 as well. Oh, 1 second. So, AI Builder. Now, the best thing about this is, actually first, let's start. Who's used the AI Builder? Sharon, there we go. Yeah. And the only lady in the room, I've noticed as well. Yeah, let's see if we can get some more next time, a bit of diversity. So the AI Builder really is a way to easily build out your models. You don't need to be a coding genius. You don't need to know much around machine learning. You can literally just click and point. It's the whole point of it. You can quickly upload files, upload documents that you wish it to learn from. It will then process and learn those particular files that you uploaded. So let's take an example. If I want to be able to take pictures and detect when a mobile phone is in a certain area, within a certain picture, I'd use the object identification AI model. I'd upload hundreds, not just 10, not just 15, the basic amount, upload hundreds of these, different sort of lights, different phones, different everything, highlight where the phone is, and after a while, that model will self-learn, and it will start going, wait a minute, there's a phone in that picture, and it'll find where it is. I don't know why you'd want to detect phones, but hey, that's the easiest thing I had to me. It's between that and the presentation pointer. So moving on from that, it is very citizen developer proud, so you'll see that it's really easy to use. I'm going to use an out-of-the-box scenario today, and really it's just a way to insert that intelligence into your app. So there's 4 points to this that are out of the box that are part of the AI models. So I'm going to have to sit down, my back is destroyed. There's binary classification. So really, this is a way to have a 0 or 1, so have an approach, a decision. So say you've got a load of data, and let's take the example on the board of memberships. So people saying, hey, are these people going to renew their membership next year? We can see from the historic data that we've had for customers, if they haven't been here in the last 2 months in the gym, then they're probably not going to renew. However, if they've been coming for the last month or within the last 2 weeks, then they're probably going to renew. So you can go through that, and it will predict the outcomes for you. And then what you can do is from that, take those subscriptions that have come, automate the ones that you know are going to sign up, and target those. So it really does the intelligence for you. And you can process lots of other components there. We will see and talk about a scenario of object identification in a minute that is being used. I'm not sure of any binary classification examples out there at the moment. Are you Sharon? No. Then we have, on top of this, we have form processing. So we do use this. So this is brilliant. What you can do is, the way we use it is for construction sites. So in construction sites, you'll have a foreman that will get a delivery of certain raw materials, such as bricks or wood or whatever it may be, and with that will come a goods received note. Now, from that, you can take a picture of that goods receipts note and actually upload it to the system. So it will grab all the quantity, the amounts, etc. It will find the purchase order sitting in F&O, align it, and push it towards the procurement manager in the back end, which is brilliant. So we can get straight away, It does all the work for them. All they have to do is take that picture, submit to process, and it will go and do all the automatic matching, etc., for them, which has been phenomenal. For us to build that out previously, it took a very, very long time. So it's really been helpful there, and I know a few others are using it, such as Heathrow as well, for detection of certain objects. But I won't go into that right now. So on top of this, object detection, this goes back to the mobile phone scenario that I provided earlier. Pepsi-Cola are one of the sort of flagship points that you would have seen if you followed MBAS. They're actually using it for audit identification around Mountain Dew bottles, Pepsi bottles, all across America. They send out audit people to different spots and different shops where they've paid for marketing and advertising. They're saying, we want to be on the front of your fridge, we want to pay for 6 slots, and we want to make sure that there's 6 slots full at all times. So what they'll do is they'll send out people in their cars to go, okay, right, I'm going to go to Walmart, and they go straight up, they take a picture of the fridge, and then it will see straight away, it will count the amount of Mountain Dew for them. They don't have to think, they can then submit that. But what it does further than that is it can look at the contract for where you are. So it will see the local, where you are locally. It will go, okay, right, you're South Carolina, you're in a Quickie Mart or whatever it may be. We've seen that the contract there is 7 facing. You take a picture, 7 aligned, send off, move on to the next customer. And it's fantastic. You know, they really has speeded up processing for them. Now, moving on from that, we then have text classification. Now, this is quite useful for things such as sentiment analysis. It can look at your historic data around cases. So say you've got customer service department, you really want to tackle the negative cases that are coming in first to make sure that you don't start going out to things such as TripAdvisor. I mean, imagine all those negative Airbnb comments. Flag them up quickly. You can start taking them off your site if it turns out that the guy running it is actually a bit of a weirdo or whatever it may be. So you can flag it up straight away. We've got 20 cases that are a negative sentiment for this particular Airbnb. Let's quickly target that rather than all these positive ones coming in, because we know that they're a low risk to us right now. So once again, it does all that for you. So AI really isn't about the robots taking over the world. It's more about, hey, let's take the most robotic part of your job, the boring parts, and do it for you so you can concentrate on getting the value out of it. And this is what we'll hopefully see today, if all goes well. So moving on from that, let's have a look at what we need to do today. So this event was something I was unsure what to present, because I always go down the Dynamics route. I only really go to the Dynamics UGs. And then suddenly I looked and I saw the Cloud UG and there's people doing stuff on Teams and Azure functions. Like, okay, these are a smart bunch. I can't really go down the Dynamics route here. That might not interest them. So I was thinking, what is it that we all face in our lives when we come to new events? And that is meeting new people and processing those details and ensuring we do follow-ups. So I thought it'd be quite handy if when everyone gives out their business cards, etc., we can take a picture of that, automatically process that information instead of having to input it in a system, and then actually process that information through, add notes, and do a direct follow-up there and then. So you can send off a flow command to say, hey, it was great meeting you. Let's organize a call sometime. Although probably best not to do that straight away. It's a bit weird if you're still standing with them at that point. However, today we are going to do that. We won't build in a delay. But the only thing about this is we do not wish to use any code, mainly because I wouldn't know where to start. I'm no C# specialist. So we are going to utilize the Power Platform in its entirety and see how we get along. So why is the Power Platform such a big deal? Because you're probably code-hungry people, and I respect that. However, for me, I'm not. So if I have a gap that I want to fill within finance and ops, and say actually we're doing customer engagement, lead management is massive. So if I took that picture of a business card, I'd want that to go into my lead management system. So if I didn't have Power Platform at that point in time, I would have to write up a solution design, which you should still do, the Power Platform, but then I'd hand that across, and that would go to machine learning experts, that would go to the Azure gods that are looking at you two there, that would go to all the technical guys, and it would take a few weeks to develop this. For now, actually, we can do this within 20 minutes, within half an hour, which we'll see today. So that's why it is such a powerful tool to have. However, there is the downside, is if everyone started making these big power apps and not doing the application lifecycle management, we could have Armageddon. So you've got to do a bit of ALM with this. And I've seen that Armageddon. We've created some beautiful things within Hitachi. So the approach to the objective. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with actually building out the common data service. So we're going to add a new entity to manage our new leads that are coming in. From that, we are then going to build the Power App, and we'll actually build out, or the out-of-the-box, the AI model. So we'll have information going into Power Apps being pushed across the AI model and running through the CDS. And then on top of that, we're going to then utilize Flow to send an email to Outlook. So I guess Flow is kind of functions for dummies. It's the only way I could see. So we have to pray to the demo gods this goes smoothly. I did tweet him earlier, and I said, hey, look, I've got a live demo. Can I please give you this gallon of beer and a chocolate badger? And it went really well until other people started joining in. So he's like, oh, this is sufficient, not sufficient. And then it just all kicked off because no one wanted it to go too well for me. They said, oh, I think he's drunk all the beer, and now he's apparently not on my side. So let's see how that goes. So without further ado, let's actually crack on with the demo. But please remind me to save the Canvas app because I forgot to last time, and the internet went down, and it was just me small talking for about 15 minutes, and probably I should have just walked off. So keep that in mind. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to open up Power Apps, and I'm going to go and create a new entity. Oh, dear, what's happened there? Fantastic. Right. So step one will be actually creating a place where we can store all this data. So who's used a common data service? Okay, same suspects. Well, so I'm going to go to Entities. And once again, this is a way to store and securely manage your data across all your business applications. So when it comes to auditing and actually integration, the CDS has been a game changer for business applications. It's really easy to get your data in and out. So I'm just going to go as simple as creating a new entity. Now, due to time, I'm not going to do all the naming conventions. I'm going to make it nice and straightforward. So I'm going to call this Cloud User Group. I'm going to change name to full name. This is just a primary key. Normally, I'd actually have an ID or a record ID there, but as it's going to be a quick demo, we can just stick with name. Then from this, I'm going to start adding the fields that I need. So if it's a contact and it's a business card, we would have things such as email. And you can change the data type to be email. There's a certain amount of validation that it places on that, but just for the sake of doing live demos, I usually keep it just to text. Then we can add another field. This will be for the phone, because that's going to be on the contact card as well. We will have things such as their job title, and then a few other things such as company, website, department. Let's just get all those in nice and easy. And then we'll also need a way of actually storing an image as well within this. And that's actually something they've developed further lately, which is really easy to store images and get them back out again. So website and department. Fantastic, and let's just get that image in. And then one last thing that I would like to include is normally it's best to keep some sort of notes. So if you've had a conversation with them, it's normally best to remember what you've actually been speaking about and what they're interested in. So I'm going to add, for when we get to enrichment, I'm just going to have a little notes column to jot down a few items. So when I do ring them, I go, hey, it's Will from the Cloud User Group, and they're like, oh Christ, and put the phone down, or I go, you know, we spoke about functions or whatever it was, then you can at least get that piece of personalization there. So I think that's quite good. We got all the fields there that we need to actually record from the business card. So we just save that entity and quickly create a view for that so we can watch the data going in once we get around to it. So to create a view, really easy. It's not like the old days of SQL. You can literally just go in. Just going to call it main, and it's just that nice user interface of drag and drop, or not even that far now. And now it's a new design. You can literally just click the columns you wish to add, which we'll see in just a moment. So I've got the full name next to that in a readable manner. I'd probably want email, phone. Then we can go to job title, department, company, website. You can see that image doesn't show up there because it's not a type that you can actually get in a view. And all I can do is simply publish that back now. And what this is good for is I'm only showing Canvas apps today, but if we were doing model-driven apps, these are the views that will be picked up by the model-driven app. So I'm just going to select done, and that'll be there. When we actually get some data into this, I can flick to the main view and watch that data presented in the view that I wish it to be presented in. So let's actually move on to creating the app. So I'm just going to say create. And then once that comes up, I'm just going to select the way I want it to be created. So there's lots of ways where you can say, actually just spin me up something for this certain entity within F&O, but we'll actually start from scratch. As you can see now, I don't know how much you guys follow from Power Platform, but portals being out is a big thing for us at the moment, so we're looking forward to getting stuck in there. This is a way to externally expose Power Apps to people. You get a little website and then they can interact, which is fantastic. So I was going to create a Canvas app from blank. I'm going to call this Cloud UG, and then I'm going to select phone. And that's just a layout. You can do responsive layouts now, so it can actually depend on where you've embedded this, where you've integrated it into. It will expand and contract depending on the size of the screen available. But we'll just call this Cloud UG, and we'll have it just for a phone, because that's what I have on me at that time. So when I'm around an event, I get the business card, I can take a picture, push process, and then carry on my day. So this is setting everything up in the background for me. Let's give that a second. And then what we'll do is start building up that user interface. We'll start bringing in those data sources, and we'll start bringing in that AI model as well to process those business cards. So the first thing I like to start with is just a picture in the background, because no one likes a boring app. So here, one I prepared earlier. So you see it's very citizen-friendly, system development friendly. You don't really need an advanced amount of knowledge at this point in time. You want to add a picture, click add a picture. What I'm going to do now is add an icon, build up the UI slightly. So it's going to go down to icons. Everyone has their own little tips and tricks around user experience and user interface. This is the one that seems to work easier for me and for the ones I've deployed it to. My tip is really, if you're integrating it into something such as Dynamic Suite, then make it mimic the environment it's in and the logos and everything else you'd expect to feel comfortable within an application. So from this, I'm going to do the old control Z and control phi, nice and simple stuff, and this is going to start building up the menu now. Now it's as simple as really adding icons, and this will get our main menu structure sorted, and then we can start adding the AI model. So what I'm going to do is go to properties, change this to something a little bit more friendly, so I'll just type in people, and then we'll have another one for contacts. So once we've actually started getting a load of business cards, it's good to see who we've already got, so we can reference that a bit later. So I'm just going to go here and type in journal. So nice and simple. Then the next stage will be to duplicate the screen, and we'll start building out the actual AI model that's going to feed that data back to the entity. So it's going to duplicate this to save some time, delete these out, and instead of building out the AI model in front of you, which will be me uploading about 100 images and then drawing a little square box around where the actual phone is or whatever it may be, or in this case, here's where the website is, here's where the number, here's the name. I'll use the out-of-the-box preview version. So here we go. So what this will do is they've made a business card processor already that has a lot of that logic already built into it. It's already trained to pick up websites, phones, job titles, and spit them out. So all we need now is the ability to actually represent that data. So what I'm going to do is add some labels, because what a label allows you to do is have text or have an output of text somewhere. So as a lot of these will be blank until we push the data through, I'm just going to put a border around it. And then all I need to do is reference the control I wish it to get its data from. So if I want it to be typed text because it's a title, I can just put it through quotation marks. Or if I actually want it to pull something in from another control, from a gallery, whatever it may be, a data table, then I have to reference that. And this is where you can kind of start seeing a little bit more of the Excel-based formulas building up. So in this case, this is just, I would need the business card reader. And then it would say, okay, we've got all these options for the business card reader. We can give you the clean image, we give you the company name, the department. Well, actually, what I want here is the full name. So I'm just going to select full name. And then all I need to do now is copy and paste this down and just make sure I fill out the rest of those details as I go. So I'll just keep pasting. We'll just get about 5 of those going. I don't want to bore you all with actually doing all 8. Fantastic. So then from here, we've got full name. The next thing we'll need, which we've got to think about what we've got in our entity. So we've got full name, we need our email. Phone number will be handy. And then we can go down to job title, which might be job role here. As you can see, it helps you the whole way. You can really start building up more and more advanced apps as you go. So I wouldn't take this as best practice what I'm doing. I would actually not label everything label 1_3_4, because as you'll see in a moment, when I get to patching this data back, it can get quite confusing. And then what we'll do next is we'll put website there. Now, what I'd also like to do is include that image as well. So I could just have it so it automatically patches across, but I think it's nice for the user to be able to see the image that they're going to be pushing back. That's away from the image that you're about to see at the scanned business card level. So if I just go from here, go to business card reader 1, and look at original image. Now this is where we should start being able to see this all in action. So what I'm doing is playing this now. So I'm from development mode into preview mode, and I'm going to scan a business card. So here's some that I grabbed earlier. So this is basically ones off the internet, so I don't know who these people are, but you know, as you can see straight away, it's picked up the name, it's picked up the email, it's picked up actually what their job role is, and it's picked up the website, and then it's pushed that image out for me, and it's done that automatically out the box. So straight away, I built that within a few minutes, and we're already getting all that detail across. So that's now the next stage is we've got the business card in, we've got the information in, let's go and store that somewhere. Now, usually I would say if we're at an event, we might not always have phone signals, so we should really build offline storage that then patches back across once we've actually got some data. However, there's not enough time in this, and it wouldn't make the best demo if I started doing stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is just start patching it straight to the CDS. So I'm going to add a button. Now, the one thing I asked you guys to remind me to do, absolutely. So let me save this now. Not saying that the Microsoft Reactor Internet is rubbish, but you know, you never know if it goes down. So we go back, that's nice and saved. So all we need to do now is start telling this button what to do. So I'm just going to label it for the use of the user. So really what we want this to do now is start storing that data. However, we haven't given it a data source. So all we can do now is go to View, Data Sources, and we can simply add a data source. Now you'll see here, there are hundreds of data connectors. Oh, that's never good, is it? All right, this could be fun if they're playing around with it, but let's see. We'll wait for this to load. I may have to reset it. Ah, there we go. So there's hundreds there, as you can see, all the way from their competitors such as Salesforce, etc., to all your social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter, right back up to CDS and your out-of-the-box business applications, Word, etc. So what I'm going to do now is search for common, because I need a common data service, and then I'm going to create. This is saying, hey, you're going to need a certain license for this. Are you sure you're okay with that? Of course we are. So we've got it now. The next stage is to remember what I named my entity. Anyone remember? Things something to do with cloud. Fantastic. Right. Hopefully this loads. Here we go. So I'll just call this cloud user group with a nice plural there that it automatically adds. And I was going to connect to that. Then what that allows us to do is that's created the connection between the app and that data source. So now we can start pushing that data that we've got back to that particular data entity. So let's grab that data entity up. Fields, fantastic. So to start off with, I'm going to need to say what I want the button to do. So on select, I want you to start patching some data. It's going to say, well, where do you want me to patch it to? I'm going to go, well, the cloud user group. So it offers me the sources that I've connected to. So it's really a nice handheld approach. Then it's going, okay, well, what sort of columns do you want us to patch it across to? And I go, well, I want the defaults from that particular data entity. And then what I can do is close that off, and I can start doing the mappings now. So where I want the field, which fields to which components or which controls, or in this case, labels within the Power App. So I'm going to start off with full name. So it's very simple. I'm going to just type in full name. It does offer to assist you along the way, but it's you know, if you know it, I find it quicker. Tell you what, this happened earlier a couple of times, and it doesn't actually seem to affect the data source. It just likes to annoy me, it seems, more than anything. So it likes to make you panic. So label 1.text, but we'll see when we start patching it across. Now, one of the tips I have is you'll get this red cross down there, and it's just basically saying something's wrong. However, if I ended up writing all of this out without checking it as I went along, then it takes a little longer to actually locate the issue, although it does help you, and it will give you sort of prompts. But if I actually close this off now, and the red cross goes, it means that everything's okay. It can see the field that it needs to patch across to, and it can see, in this case, the label within the actual Canvas app. So we're happy there now. So if I push process now, it will just send across that name. However, that's not going to be too useful for me. So the next thing I'd like to do is get the email across, which will be label. See, this is why you should always give it good naming conventions. If I called the label email, it'd be very easy to achieve here. But luckily, I can slightly count. So we should be okay here. Right, so we've got the email across. So let's just do a few of the others. We're going to need phone. Easy again, so it'd be label 1_2.text. So what it's saying is, And why this is coming up, it's saying, okay, there's lots of properties to do with this particular field or this particular label. You have the color properties, you have the height. What do you want us to patch? Do you want us to send across the fact that its X variable is like, 280 or whatever it is? Probably not, but what would be useful is the text within it that we've inputted. So once we've done the phone, the next thing we need to do is actually the job role. So that will be label, label 1_3, fantastic. So I speak for 10 seconds and I can't remember where I am. Text. And then the last but not least, we're going to then push across the website. And all we need to do is patch that then to the particular label, so that would be for.text. Now, the last thing that I want to grab there, so there is an error, and we'll come to that in a minute, what's going on there. The last thing I want to grab is the image. And it's quite good it's an error, because you can see how easy troubleshooting is within this as well. I actually baked that in. No. So what we're going to do here is just grab that, the actual image we had earlier. So I'm going to say, hey, image, and it should be something like image 1. And what do you want me to grab from the image? Well, I want you to grab the image. So from this, we can quickly see what's going on here. So it's saying, actually, the specified column job role does not exist. That probably means that I've said something like job title. There you go. So if I type in job title, that error should go away. So if I go down to here, so you can see really even the errors for Microsoft are actually bloody useful. Although you do get this classic one that just says an unknown error occurred. And you're like, great, where do I start? And it actually turns out half the time that you've missed .text or the property. So I do keep meaning to say, well, why don't we just, why don't you say you've missed off defining the lower end of the scope, but oh well. Now, processing that is good. However, the user's going to expect a little bit more than that, because if you just process and then stay on the page and go, okay, what's happened? So you do need some sort of feedback. Normally, I would build in some sort of submitting page, so it knows that something's going on. However, due to time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first label these so we don't get confused. So this will be business card. And this will be the landing. So what we're going to do is just duplicate the landing. We're going to rename it to process, because this is where we're actually going to process that card. And then we're just going to move it down. Now, what I can tell this to do now, and I'm just going to delete these, because what we can tell that button to do now is actually once you've patched that, let's do something more. Let's actually navigate. So I want you to navigate, as in move, and I want you to move to a screen within this app, which is actually going to be the process page. Let's go, oh, that's fantastic, but what sort of transition do you want me to do? Do you want me to just fade out, or do you want me to swipe right, or blow up? What do you want? We go, I could just cover right. That would do for us. Now, they haven't actually worked on the transitions that much. I think we've got a new one in the last 2 years. So you can see, that's where they should really focus their efforts, right? But no, that's not what they do. So close that bracket off. As you can see, really nice. Really nice and easy to do. Citizen developer friendly. However, you do have to remember a ton of these little control and formula mechanisms, but luckily there is a library out there that helps on one of the Microsoft document sites. So I think we're looking good. What we can do is just test this out now. So this is going to process across the CDS. He says, hopefully. You'll notice the image has dropped. There is a way of keeping that there, but for the sake of this and the extra formulas I need to put in, I won't bother, because we're going to run through this a few times. Well, so it's thinking about it. Let's hope this goes through. I've only asked it to do 5 things, so I promise you the performance is actually normally a lot better than this. Maybe it's the tablets have kicked in and everything's in slow-mo for me. And then from this, we're going to move on to the next page, where we're going to start building out things like, here you're going to be able to see what you've processed through. If you already have Gene Doe existing in your system, because it might be a duplicate, someone else might already own that account. And then from that, we're going to actually have the ability to edit things. The amount of times people go, oh, this is my old business cards. I'm actually not the director of energy conversion anymore. I'm something else now. So you'll be able to update that. However, I might just have to make small talk for the next 20 minutes. No, fantastic. Okay. So from this, we'll be able to quickly go and check that that data's gone through, and if it hasn't, no one wants to see that run again. Here we go. So let's look at that view we built out, and straight away, you can see that that data has quickly processed through. So let's think about this. We've extended a database to CDS. we've gone further from that. We've actually deployed an AI model that easily reads cards. And what I can do at the end is actually show you this on my phone, so I can deploy this to my phone and take a few, if anyone has their, this isn't a way for me to mine data, by the way. Yeah, no, because I don't believe in GDPR, and we like the 4% global turnover. And then what we've done from that is then actually process that data back to the CDS. Now let's continue that process and that enrichment side. So what we're going to do is delete that so we can see the smiling lady even further. And then what we're going to do is go, okay, fantastic. Let's insert a gallery. So gallery is just a way to represent data and drill into it. I personally love working with them, and you'll see a little bit more of their functionality in just a moment. So the first thing, now we've got the gallery, a bit like when you get the data tables put in forms, you need to tell it what data you wish it to process and represent. So straight away, this bit's really nice and easy. It'll go, hey, here's a data source. And I go, fantastic. Let's click that, cloud user groups. And it's going to start showing me anything that I've got in that cloud user group table. So let's wait for that to process through. It does seem to be on a bit of a go slow. So once that data's come through, I'll then start filtering it down, because actually, once the users process that business card, they don't want to see everything. They just want to see that particular record they've processed and any others that are like that, so they know if someone else has already uploaded it. So from here, I'm going to say, well, we want to filter that. So I want to filter this particular data entity where, was it name or full name I had it under? Full name, fantastic. So where the full name actually equals the name you've just processed. So we can reference that back to the screen before 5 minutes. Fantastic, okay. So we're a bit behind, but that's fine. And where it actually equals the name from before. Okay, so what it's saying is, okay, I've got all these people, and I only want to see the one that matches Gene Doe. So from here, I can quickly expand this. I'm going to insert a couple of other labels. So I'm going to have to disregard the UI a bit here and just start processing this. So we have company. Put that a bit further down. As long as the email's in there, I don't really care about the rest. There we go, fantastic. Right, let's minimize this back. Now from this, I'm going to close out of that. I'm quite happy. This is just selecting which data you want in there. So if I say job title as well, just so we get some information, then what I might want to do is insert the ability to delete as well. So I'm just going to put in a cancel icon. And then from here, I need to tell it, OK, once you select it, what you want this to do. So I'm going to say remove, and then cloud user groups, and then this item. And that's in case we get duplicate values coming through. Then I'm going to do a little bit of a rush now. So let's move this gallery down. Let's quickly put in a label that can detect how many of that particular value we have in. So I just want you to count anything in this gallery. So gallery 1, and we know that our particular key ID here that's always going to have a value is the full name, or name in this case. Oh, sorry, dot selected, or all items, dot full name. There we go. And then just close that off, and then just let the user know what that's actually going to be about. Records found. Perhaps it's on a bit of a go slow today. So then what I'll do is quickly throw in a couple of icons. So I do worry that we might not get through all this today, but I think you're seeing the process in general. So what I'll do is I'll just go use the back button, use a quick formula for this. And what we'll do is just process a few more business cards so you can see it in action a bit more, and then we'll go and look at some of the other examples. So from here, let's pull in this dinosaur card. What it's going to do is read through that data again. We'll be able to process it through. I won't be able to get the forms in this time, sadly. But it's the same principle. You just select where you want the data to come from. You can edit and upload. And then if you get a couple of these, so we process this again, we'll then be able to start removing that data from the CDS. Now, I can show you either further examples of real-life business cases, or I can quickly show you the flow. It depends. Would you rather see more examples, or would you rather quickly see a flow built out? It's up to you. Flow, okay. So what I'll do is quickly, Christ, how long we got? 2 minutes. It's going to be the flow of my life. Right. Let's see if we can do this. So flows. It'll be a nice, easy one. All we want to do is be able to quickly send an email to that particular email address saying it's been nice to meet you. So I'm going to create from blank. Create from blank again. So the trigger is actually going to be the Power Apps in this case. So I'm saying, okay, whenever I do something in Power Apps, this is what I want the trigger to be, and I want it to send an email to Outlook in this case. So send an email. And then I want you to ask in Power Apps for who I'm sending it to. Great meeting you, and then I would normally put the name in here, but for the sake of time, hey, great meeting you. Beer. Done. Save that. Untitled. It was a lot more eloquent, the one I sort of went through in my head. We're going to have to keep the cancel button because we're running out of time. We can do action. We can literally say, let's add that flow. Power Apps, send an email. Once again, great name. And then, once that gets added in, I need to then just, because it's already within the gallery, it can see the fields that are already there. So all I need to do is now the email's there, I can just select that. It was the top one, right? Let's see, otherwise it's deleting that record. Right, and then what I can do is back out of this, just gonna save it again. I hate, because even if you have saved it, it still warns you that you could lose it. So look, I've just saved it, and it's like, oh, are you sure? Now from this, if I go to here, as you can see, it's succeeded. But proof's in the pudding, right? Should have loaded this up earlier so you don't see a ton of confidential emails, but I'm sure we're all friends here, right? Yeah. Right. Oh, there we go, automatic response. So let's wait for that to come in, and that's just as I'll be told to leave the stage, you'll be pleased to hear. So let's give that a second. Is this oh, do you know why? It's because normally I would, if I had the edit form, I'd be able to edit that to my address. But sadly, because I haven't, you can see it's actually gone through, but it's saying, hey, this dinosaur email doesn't exist. So it's a good job it doesn't. But really, I think that's going to have to be it for me because I'm out of time now, I think. Is that correct? He said 5 minutes ago. Yeah, so thank you, guys, and sorry that was a bit of a rush.
So thank you very much, Will. So we're just going to take a 20-minute break. There's pizzas and all that, and more drinks just out in the area there. If we can come back in about 20, 25 minutes, that'd be great. Thank you.